Drake ripped a bite out of his sandwich as he scoured the blueprints for the GNN building. He chewed slowly on the tough piece of salted pork in his mouth. The process of committing the building's floor plan to memory made him hungry. He could hear Remen and Cassius sparring against each other through the floor. The ringing of steel on steel interspersed with muffled banter. Drake paused and sniffed the air, catching the scent of Kaz's cooking. The sweet and tangy odor of spices and meat reaching him from the kitchen down the hall. Destrier had disappeared with Martha to go conduct some experiments a little over 2 hours ago, and he hadn't heard from either since. Not that he was about to go looking for them. Cracking his neck, Drake sat back and ripped another bite off his sandwich. The merchant's desk chair was a high-backed monstrosity of unpadded wood that Drake considered to be the most comfortable piece of furniture in the house. He'd found himself spending a lot of time in it lately, planning the raid, or just thinking. The door to the office burst open, startling Drake into grabbing the lace pistol he'd left on the merchant's desk. He tossed it back upon seeing Destrier's flushed, grinning face. "You look excited," Drake commented, quickly cut off by the visibly excited Destrier. Drake! Drake! It worked! You gotta come see this!" The mountain of a man grabbed Drake's arm and practically dragged him like a ragdoll out of the office. Drake protested to no avail as he was dragged over the desk, scattering papers, ornaments, and an inkwell to the ground. Stumbling to his feet in the hallway, he exasperately inquired, "What in Golgotha has you so excited?" Destrier didn't answer in any meaningful way, as he babbled something about engineering and genetics. Destrier pulled Drake down from the stairs before swiping a card in a slot in the wall, which slid open to reveal a hidden elevator that Destrier pulled Drake into. Resigned to not getting an answer, Drake sighed and watched the numbers above the door tick down, and down, and down. Until after a solid 5 minutes, the elevator came to a stop at the -30th floor. Destrier finally let go of Drake's hand and gestured at the room behind him. Drake's jaws went slack as he slowly stepped into the brightly lit room. Gleaming, human-sized and shaped sets of power armor lined the walls. Sets of standard armor lay neatly set out on tables that seemed to rise from the floor. Guns of makes and models he didn't recognize occupied their own wall. Det spheres, ammunition, raw explosives, ordnance launchers, and even a freshly made BAB occupied the far-right corner behind blast-resistant glass. What really caught his attention, however, was the small animal pen set up in the middle of the room. A slightly disheveled but grinning Martha gazed at the center of the enclosure, where a massive egg sat on a pedestal. Drake slowly walked up to the edge of the enclosure, awed by the scene before him. Slowly, he looked at Martha. What laid that?" Martha giggled a little bit as Destrier hugged her from behind before responding. "It's a creature from Earth's early Cretaceous period, Utahraptor ostromyosorum. With a bit of gene editing and a lot of failed attempts, we finally have a viable specimen. It just needs to incubate." Drake blinked. He had no clue what any of that meant. He slowly shook his head, realizing it doesn't matter. "Okay, one question. Why?" Martha smiled. "It'll grow up to 18 feet long, and its main claws can grow up to 9 inches in length. With a few upgrades after it reaches maturity, it'll be a natural killing machine. It will need a name, though, but that can wait." Martha gestured at a table Drake hadn't noticed yet, that was covered in gear. Walking over, Martha picked up a helmet with a mohawk of red hair sprouting from the top. "I made you some new armor using examples from Earth's history. This is a Corinthian helmet, typically made of bronze at the time. Destrier forged this one out of your old Titanite breastplate." She set the helmet down and picked up a chest plate made with thin plates of metal on a thick but flexible material. "Another piece of modernized Greco-Roman gear. This is a lorica segmentata, using a titanium nanomesh as the backer and titanite plates. It should allow you to move relatively freely, while offering decent protection. Both of these hook directly up to your new spine, so no straps or hooks required." Drake picked up the helmet, feeling its weight in his hands before slowly slipping it over his head. hearing and feeling it lock into his spine with a series of clicks. He turned his head, and the helmet perfectly followed the movements to keep the eye holes in front of his eyes. He removed it and gave Martha a smile. "Thank you. I'll wear it with pride. Should help me strike an imposing figure during the raid. Think you could outfit the others in similar gear? Though, not the same. I'd like to see more of Earth's old designs." Martha nodded. "With pleasure. I'll get right to work." Drake pulled the lorica over his head, the rapid sound of clicking coming from his back as the armor snugged up around his chest. He glanced over as Remen tightened the straps on his Hundestu Kuyak, an ancient type of armor worn from the Mongol tribes. It was a type of armor known as lamellar, thick cloth layers with hundreds of tiny plates sewn onto the outer surface. Chainmail was sandwiched between the cloth layers for extra protection. According to Martha, this wasn't historically accurate, but necessary for protection. Remen donned the pointed Tatar helmet, making sure the neck protector was in place before giving Drake a thumbs up and a steel-toothed grin. Destrier was running some diagnostics on a suit of power armor that had been reworked to mirror something called an oyori from a place called Japan. The pauldrons were big and square, like shoulder-mounted shields. The helmet had a bell-like shape to it with a wide brim, and metal horns stretching up out from the front. The faceplate had been worked into the likeness of a demon called an oni, with a fanged snarl. Cassius faded in and out of existence, wearing simple titanium chainmail over a modified nanofiber gambeson. He practiced kicks and lightning-fast punches as he faded in and out of view, the armor sparkling slightly as its refractive coating synchronized with his bionic skin. His armor, according to Martha, came from the medieval ages of Europe. Kaz wore only a thick nanomesh cloak that could change colors and texture to blend into any environment. It wasn't like Cassius's active camouflage, where it made her completely invisible. It more closely acted as a multi-environment ghillie suit. However, Martha had given Kaz a prototype railgun she'd been designing in her spare time. From the testing Martha had shown him, that thing could punch through a Gallic like it was a butter from over a mile away with negligible recoil. It did, however, take almost a full minute to charge the capacitors for that kind of velocity. A bandolier of small, monolithic construction, tungsten darts, ran across Kaz's chest for easy access. Drake held his Corinthian helmet by the mohawk and knocked on it with the armored knuckle of his glove, making it ring like a bell to get everyone's attention. The four looked up from their tasks as he began to speak. "Remember, we don't kill anyone if we don't have to. We don't need to give the monarchy ammo against us. But if it's you or them, they die first. We need to make it to the broadcast room and upload the backdoor program Martha gave us. Then we need to make it back here in one piece. If this winds up anything like our previous endeavors, that'll be the hard part." He took his Corinthian helmet in both hands and slid it over his head, hearing it lock into his bionic spine. "Let's get a move on. I want to be out of there before dawn." There were no words. They weren't necessary as the five retrieved their weapons and adjusted their armor before making their way towards the merchant's garage. Goom felt bones in his face break as Gomon's heavy fist crashed down, again and again. Goom begged for his life as his commanding officer wordlessly rained down bionically enhanced blows. Gomon eventually hauled Goom up by the collar and threw the bawling, begging lizard against the wall before finally speaking. "You went over my head, and without even consulting a superior officer, sent our only stealth prototype to its doom. Am I mistaken, Goom Albertrank?" Goom shakily shook his head and whimpered. "No, sir." Gomon turned, his heavy metal tail crashing into Goom's ribs and knocking him away from the wall, as Gomon inspected Goom's recent project, staring into the needle and clamp-filled coffin that a parasite would be forced into to act as a biological computer. Gomon tapped his chin thoughtfully with one of the abnormally wide and broad blades on his war gauntlet, as Goom coughed up blood behind him. Gomon smiled and pointed at the two mercenaries who'd brought the situation to his attention. "Haul your former boss to my taxidermy table. However, I want you to sedate this one. His body doesn't need skin to act as his new machine's core. Goom's eyes widened, and he screamed for mercy as his 2 ex-lieutenants took him by the arms. He struggled weakly before going limp, simply asking,
Why? Why me, big brother?
Goemon snarled.
I'd kill our mother for a stunt like that, you imbecile. In a matter of fact, I did, after she tried surrendering to those filthy parasites.
Goom was shocked.
You said it was an engine malfunction.
Goemon scoffed disgustedly.
Yeah, one I induced. Imbecile.
Goom slowly hung his head in shock as he was dragged through the door.